The fire was dying. Across the smoke, two men stared at each other. Neither blinked. Neither moved. They had been awake for 2 days. The axe lay between them. Its blade was still dark with Travers' blood. The one called Greenhill had carried that axe for 30 days. He had used it 3 times. 3 men. 3 meals. Now his eyes were glass. His hands trembled. His head kept dipping toward his chest. The other man, Pearce, watched. He had no weapon. He had only patience. Greenhill's chin touched his chest. His eyes fluttered closed. Pearce lunged for the axe. But who were these men? How did 2 starving convicts end up alone in the wilderness fighting over an axe and the right to eat the loser? To understand, we have to go back 6 weeks to a place called Sarah Island, a prison so brutal men begged to be hanged rather than stay, and to the night 8 desperate souls walked into a forest, knowing only one truth: not all of them would walk out. They called it Hell's Gate, the narrow entrance to Macquarie Harbor, where the Southern Ocean squeezed between 2 cliffs and spat boats into the darkest corner of Van Diemen's Land. The water here was black. Not blue, not green. Black. Stained by the button grass and hoon pine that rotted in the rivers feeding the harbor. Ships that passed through Hell's Gate rarely came back the same. Neither did men. Alexander Pearce sat in the belly of a longboat, his wrists rubbed raw beneath iron manacles, watching the cliffs slide past like the doors of a tomb swinging shut. He was 32 years old, Irish, a thief. He had stolen 6 pairs of shoes in County Fermanagh, and for that crime, the Crown had shipped him to the far side of the world. 7 years transportation, they had said. 7 years. And then freedom. That had been 5 years ago. 5 years of labor, of the lash, of watching men die from dysentery and despair. 5 years of good behavior earning him nothing but a transfer to this place, Macquarie Harbor, where the Empire sent the men it wanted to forget. The convict beside him, a Londoner named Kennerly, leaned close. His breath was sour with scurvy. "They say no one escapes from Sarah Island," Kennerly whispered. "They say the bush swallows you whole." Pearce said nothing. He had heard the stories. Everyone had heard the stories. The island sat in the middle of the harbor, a flat tongue of mud and misery surrounded by water too cold to swim. Beyond the water rose the mountains, nameless, unmapped, choked with a forest so dense that men walked on top of the fallen trees rather than through them. They called it the horizontal scrub, a labyrinth of rotting timber, tangled roots, and endless rain. Men who fled into that wilderness did not come back. Their bones were never found. The longboat ground against the jetty. A guard with a face like boiled leather stood waiting, a cat-o'-nine tails coiled at his belt. "Welcome to Sarah Island, lads," he said, and his smile showed 3 missing teeth. "You'll be cutting timber until you die, or the king forgives you. And the king don't know your names." Pearce stepped onto the jetty. The wood was slick with rain, and something darker. Old blood, perhaps, or the black mud that seemed to coat everything here. The wind cut through his canvas shirt like a blade. It was September, the tail end of winter in this upside-down land, and the cold had a weight to it, a permanence. It settled into your marrow and never left. He looked up at the mountains ringing the harbor. Somewhere beyond those peaks lay the settled lands. Hobart Town, farms, ships that could carry a man anywhere in the world. Freedom. But between here and there stretched 200 miles of wilderness that no white man had ever crossed. Visual. Convicts working in the timber yard, stripped to the waist despite the cold, hauling massive Huon pine logs through knee-deep mud. Guards watching from elevated platforms with muskets, rain falling steadily, 1820s colonial photography, sepia with cold gray tones, film grain, 8K, aspect ratio 16:9. The first day, Pearce learned the rhythm of Sarah Island. Wake before dawn. Eat a handful of maize that tasted of weevils. March to the timber yards. Swing an axe until your shoulders screamed. Eat another handful of maize. Swing the axe until dark. Sleep on a wooden plank in a hut that leaked from every seam. Wake before dawn. Repeat. The second day, he learned the punishment. A convict named Sullivan had dropped a log. Just dropped it. His arms had given out, and the timber had fallen into the mud. The guards tied him to the triangle, a wooden frame shaped like the letter A, and gave him 50 lashes. Pearce watched from 30 feet away. He watched the cat-o'-nine-tails rise and fall, watched Sullivan's back open like a red mouth, watched the blood run down and pool in the mud at his feet. Sullivan died 3 days later. Infection, they said. But Pearce knew the truth. The man had simply given up. The weeks crawled past. Pearce swung his axe and said nothing. He ate his weevil maize and said nothing. He watched men die from cold, from the lash, from accidents with falling timber, from simply sitting down one morning and refusing to stand again. And he said nothing. But he listened. He listened to the men who whispered about the bush, about the paths that might exist through the horizontal scrub, about the shepherds' huts that might lie on the other side of the mountains, about the food that might be found if a man knew how to hunt. And he watched one man in particular, Robert Greenhill. Greenhill was a sailor from Middlesex, tall, strong, a face like a hatchet and eyes that never seemed to blink. He had been transported for assault, nearly killed a man in a tavern brawl, they said, and laughed about it after. On Sarah Island, he worked the timber gang with a kind of savage efficiency that the guards admired and the other convicts feared. But it wasn't his strength that drew Pearce's attention. It was his axe. Greenhill had been assigned to the felling crew. That meant he carried an axe from the tool shed every morning and returned it every night. But Pearce had noticed something. Greenhill always volunteered for the late shift, always returned his axe after dark when the guards were tired and the count was sloppy. One night, Pearce saw him slip the axe beneath his sleeping plank. The guards never noticed. They never counted the tools properly. They assumed no convict would be mad enough to escape into the bush, so they stopped looking for signs of madness. Pearce lay on his plank and stared at the ceiling. Water dripped through a crack and landed on his forehead, one drop at a time, like a clock counting down. He thought about Sullivan, bleeding out in the mud. He thought about 7 years, and how many of those years he had left. He thought about the mountains and what lay beyond them. And he thought about Greenhill's axe. The next morning, Pearce found Greenhill at the timber pile. "I know about the axe," he said quietly. Greenhill's eyes narrowed. His hand drifted toward the tool at his belt. "And I want to come with you," Pearce continued. "When you run." Greenhill studied him for a long moment. The rain dripped from his brow. His jaw worked like he was chewing on a decision. Then he smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "You'll need strong legs," Greenhill said, "and a stronger stomach." Pearce nodded. He did not understand the warning. Not yet. He would. The plan spread through the timber gang like a sickness. Greenhill had chosen his men carefully. 8 convicts in total. Enough hands to carry supplies, enough bodies to fight if they had to, enough meat if things went wrong. Though he never said that last part aloud. Not yet. Pearce met them in the tool shed on the night of September 20th, 1822. The guards had finished their rounds. The rain was heavy enough to mask footsteps, and the moon was hidden behind clouds so thick they seemed solid. He counted the faces in the dark. Robert Greenhill stood at the center, the axe already in his hand. Its blade caught the candlelight and threw it back like a warning. Beside him was Matthew Travers, a highway robber from Kent, lean as a whip and twice as quick. He had killed a coachman during a holdup, though he claimed it was self-defense. His eyes moved constantly, checking corners, counting exits. He and Greenhill had been inseparable since the voyage from England. They shared a plank, shared their rations, shared a loyalty that made other men nervous. Thomas Bodenham leaned against the wall, arms crossed, trying to look calm and failing. He was young, 23 at most, with soft hands that had never known real labor before Sarah Island. A forger from London. He had counterfeited banknotes, lived well for a year, and then made the mistake of trusting the wrong woman. Now his soft hands were calloused and cracked, and his eyes held the permanent flinch of a man who had learned what the lash felt like. John Mather stood apart from the others, his back against the door, watching Greenhill with something between respect and suspicion. He was Irish, like Pearce, but from the north, a Protestant from County Antrim who had been transported for stealing a horse. He was strong, nearly as strong as Greenhill, and he made no secret of the fact that he thought he should be leading this escape, not following. The tension between them was a living thing. Pearce could feel it in the air, thick as the smell of rust and sweat. 3 more men filled out the group. William Dalton, A pickpocket from the London slums, quick-fingered and quick-footed, but small. He had survived Sarah Island by making himself useful to bigger men, carrying their tools, fetching their rations. He smiled too much, and meant none of it. Thomas Kennerly, the scurvy-breathed Londoner who had sat beside Pearce in the longboat, a burglar by trade, caught climbing through a magistrate's window. He was older than the others, nearly 40, with gray in his beard and a wheeze in his chest that came from too many winters in too many cold cells. And finally, Alexander Brown, not to be confused with any other Brown, he always said, though no one laughed. He was a farm laborer from Cornwall who had burned down his employer's barn after a dispute over wages. Quiet, strong, slow to anger, but thorough when he got there. He stood with his hands in his pockets, watching Greenhill, with the patience of a man who had learned to wait for what he wanted. Greenhill let the silence stretch. He enjoyed it, the power of making other men wait for his words. Finally he spoke. "The bush will kill most men in 3 days," he said. His voice was low, almost casual. No water they can find, no food they can catch, no path they can follow. They walk in circles until they drop. But I've talked to men who worked the surveyor crews. There's a route, east through the scrub, then north along the rivers. 14 days, maybe 15, and we hit the shepherd stations near the Derwent. From there, it's a straight shot to Hobart Town. 14 days, Mather said, with no food. We'll find food. Greenhill's smile was thin. There's game in the bush, possums, wallabies. We'll manage. Pearce watched the other men's faces. He saw hope there, desperate, starving hope. But he also saw doubt. 14 days through country that had swallowed every man who ever entered it. 14 days with nothing but an axe and the clothes on their backs. "What about the guards?" Bodenham asked. His voice cracked on the last word. "The guards don't chase men into the scrub," Greenhill said. "They're not stupid. They know the bush will do their work for them. They'll report us missing, have a drink, and wait for our bones to wash up on the shore." "So we prove them wrong," Travers added. He was grinning, but his eyes were cold. "We walk out of hell and never look back." Dalton raised his hand like a schoolboy. "And if we can't find game, if we can't find food?" The question hung in the air. No one answered it. Greenhill looked at each man in turn. His gaze lingered on Bodenham, who flinched. On Dalton, who dropped his eyes. On Mather, who stared back without blinking. "Then we do what we have to do," Greenhill said quietly. "To survive." Pearce felt something cold move through his chest. A premonition, perhaps. A warning from some part of his mind that understood what Greenhill meant, even if the words were vague. But he pushed it down. He thought of the triangle, of Sullivan's back opening under the lash, of the years stretching ahead of him. Endless, identical, each one a small death. He would rather die in the bush than live on Sarah Island. "Tomorrow night," Greenhill said. "After the evening count, we slip into the scrub behind the timber yard, and we don't stop until we're through the mountains or we're dead. Anyone who wants out, say so now. Once we go, there's no coming back." No one spoke. "Then get some sleep," Greenhill said. He snuffed the candle between his fingers. The darkness swallowed them whole. "You'll need it." Pearce walked back to the convict hut alone. The mud sucked at his boots with each step, reluctant to let him go. He thought about Greenhill's words. "Then we do what we have to do." He told himself it meant hunting, trapping, eating bark if necessary. He told himself that. The next day passed. In a haze, Pearce swung his axe, ate his weevil maize, kept his head down. But his eyes kept drifting to the tree line, to the wall of green and gray that marked the edge of the world. By nightfall, his hands were shaking, not from fear, from anticipation. The evening count was sloppy, as always. The guards were tired. The rain had started again. They wanted to get inside, get warm, get drunk. They counted 73 convicts, marked it in the ledger, and waved everyone toward the huts. They didn't notice that only 65 went inside. 8 men slipped into the darkness behind the timber yard. 8 men moved through the mud, past the saw pits, past the stacks of Huon pine, toward the tree line. 8 men walked into the horizontal scrub, and the forest closed behind them like a mouth. Pearce looked back once. Through a gap in the branches, he could see the distant glow of torches on Sarah Island. It looked small, fragile, a speck of light in an ocean of black. Then the scrub shifted, and the light disappeared. They were free, or they were dead. The bush would decide which. By the 3rd day, Pearce understood why they called it the horizontal. The forest was not a forest at all. It was a graveyard of trees, ancient giants that had fallen and stacked upon each other over centuries, creating a lattice of rotting timber suspended above the true ground. Moss covered everything. Ferns erupted from every crack. And below the tangle, in the darkness beneath their feet, lay a black void of mud and water and things that had died there long ago. They did not walk through the scrub. They walked on top of it. "Watch your step," Greenhill called back. He moved along a fallen trunk with the confidence of a man who had been born on ship rigging, his axe slung across his back. "The wood's rotten in places. Fall through and you'll break your legs." Bodenham was struggling. His soft London hands couldn't grip the wet timber, and his balance was poor. Twice already he had fallen to his knees, catching himself at the last moment before plunging through the gaps. His breath came in ragged gasps, and his face was the color of old candle wax. "Keep up," Mather growled from behind him. "You fall. We're not coming back for you." "I'm trying," Bodenham gasped. "I'm trying." Pearce watched from the middle of the line. He had found his rhythm now, testing each log before putting his weight on it, moving from trunk to trunk like a man crossing stepping stones in a river. His body ached from the constant climbing and balancing, but his mind was clear, clearer than it had been in years. He was doing something. He was moving. He was not waiting for the lash. The cold was relentless. It seeped through their canvas shirts, through their skin, into the core of them. The rain never stopped. Not for an hour. Not for a minute. It fell in sheets, in mist, in fat drops that burst against their heads like tiny punishments. Their clothes had been soaked since the first night and would not dry for weeks. The chill settled into their bones and stayed there, a permanent tenant. "How much further?" Dalton called from the back of the line. His voice was thin, reedy, the voice of a man who was already regretting his choices. "Another 10 days," Greenhill said without looking back. "Maybe 12. 10 days of this? Would you rather go back?" Dalton said nothing. They stopped to rest when the light began to fail. Not that the light made much difference. The canopy was so thick that even noon felt like dusk, and dusk felt like the bottom of a well. But Greenhill could read the forest in ways the others couldn't. He knew when to push and when to pause. "We eat," he announced, settling onto a log and pulling something from inside his shirt. The something was a piece of leather, a strap from one of the tool harnesses at Sarah Island, made from kangaroo hide. Greenhill had cut it into strips before they left. He passed the strips around. 1 per man. Pearce put the leather in his mouth. It tasted like sweat and animal fat and something else. Something sour that might have been the beginning of rot. He chewed until his jaw ached, working the hide into something soft enough to swallow. It sat in his stomach like a stone. "This isn't food," Brown muttered. He was staring at his strip of leather with disgust. "It's what we have," Greenhill replied. "There'll be game further east. Possums. Maybe a wallaby. But first we have to get through the scrub." "How do you know?" Mather asked. His voice had an edge to it. "How do you know there's game? How do you know there's anything out there except more of this?" He gestured at the endless tangle of timber surrounding them. Greenhill's hand moved to the axe at his side. Just a small movement, just a reminder. "Because I've talked to men who know," he said quietly. "And because we don't have a choice. So eat your leather, Mather, and save your strength for walking." Mather held Greenhill's gaze for a long moment. Then he looked away, put the leather in his mouth, and chewed. The moment passed, but Pearce filed it away in his mind. A crack in the group. A fracture that would widen with time. Everything widened with time out here. They walked through the night. Greenhill pushed them forward even when their legs buckled and their eyes blurred. Every hour of movement was an hour away from Sarah Island. An hour closer to freedom, or an hour closer to death. The forest didn't care which. "What was that?" Kennerly gasped. The older man was wheezing badly now, his scurvy weakened body failing him. "Wombat, maybe," Travers said. "Or a devil." "Devils eat the dead," Dalton whispered. "They can smell a corpse from miles away." "Then let's make sure we're not corpses," Greenhill said. "Keep moving." By the 5th day, Pearce had stopped feeling his feet. The cold and the damp had done something to them, turned them into numb blocks at the end of his legs. He walked on memory alone, his body following the rhythm it had learned. Test the log. Step. Balance. Test the next log. Step. Balance. His stomach had stopped growling. That was the worst part. When a man's belly stopped demanding food, it meant the body had begun to eat itself. Muscle first, then fat, then organs. He had seen it happen in the prisons. Men who simply shrank over weeks until there was nothing left but skin and bone and the terrible patience of slow starvation. The leather was gone. They had chewed through all of it, the harness straps, the belt from Brown's trousers, even the lacings from Bodenham's boots. Now they had nothing. "We need to hunt," Mather said on the morning of the 6th day. "There's got to be something in this bloody forest we can eat." Greenhill stopped walking. He stood on a massive log, looking out at the endless scrub, and for a moment his confidence seemed to flicker. Then he pointed. "Smoke," he said. "That's a fire," Travers breathed. "A campfire. There's someone out there." "Shepherds?" Dalton's voice cracked with hope. "It could be shepherds. They'll have food, shelter." But Pearce was watching Greenhill's face. The leader wasn't smiling. His eyes had narrowed, calculating something. "We go toward the smoke," Greenhill said slowly. "But carefully. It might be shepherds. It might be natives. Either way, we don't know if they'll help us or turn us in." "What do we do if they won't help?" Brown asked. Greenhill pulled the axe from his back. He held it loosely, almost casually, but the meaning was clear. "Then we take what we need," he said. They moved toward the smoke. Starving, desperate, 8 men with 1 weapon and nothing left to lose. The forest thinned as they walked. The fallen timber gave way to standing trees. The ground, the actual ground, appeared beneath their feet for the first time in days. Pearce stumbled when he stepped onto solid earth. His legs had forgotten how to walk on anything flat. The smoke was closer now. They could smell it. Wood smoke, and beneath that, something else. Cooking meat. Pearce's stomach clenched so hard he nearly doubled over. The smell was agony. It was every meal he had ever missed. Every hunger pang he had ever felt, concentrated into a single ribbon of scent threading through the rain. "Easy," Greenhill murmured. "Stay quiet. Let me see what we're dealing with." They crept forward, through the trees, through the mist, until they could see the source of the smoke. A campfire. Small and guttering in the rain, sheltered by a makeshift lean-to. And beside it, a single figure. An Aboriginal man, old and thin, tending a wallaby carcass on a wooden spit. 8 starving men stared at the meat. The old man had not seen them. He sat with his back half-turned, focused on his cooking, humming a song in a language none of them understood. "We take it," Greenhill whispered. "We take it, and we go." "What about him?" Pearce heard himself ask. Greenhill didn't answer. He didn't need to. Greenhill moved first. He slipped through the ferns like a snake through water, the axe held low against his thigh. Travers followed, then Brown, then the others. A line of gaunt shadows converging on the firelight. Pearce hung back. Something in his chest had tightened, a knot that wouldn't loosen. The old man was alone. unarmed. He had done nothing wrong except light a fire in the wrong place at the wrong time. The elder's humming stopped. The old man turned. His eyes, rheumy with age but sharp with understanding, found Greenhill first. Then the axe. Then the ring of starving white men emerging from the trees like spirits of the dead. He did not scream. He did not run. He simply looked at them with an expression that Pearce would remember for the rest of his life. Not fear, pity. "The meat," Greenhill said. His voice was hoarse, cracked from days without proper water. "We need it." The old man looked at the wallaby, then back at Greenhill. Slowly, deliberately, he reached out and lifted the spit from its supports. He held the carcass toward them. An offering. "Take it," Mather breathed from somewhere behind Pearce. "Just take it, and let's go." Greenhill reached for the spit. His fingers had almost closed around it when the old man spoke. The words were in a language none of them knew. Soft, musical, weighted with something ancient. But the meaning was clear enough. A warning. A prophecy. The old man looked at each of them in turn, his eyes settling last on Pearce, and he spoke again. A single phrase, repeated 3 times. Then he released the spit into Greenhill's hands, turned his back, and walked into the forest. "He just gave it to us," Dalton said. "He just walked away." "What did he say?" Kennerly asked. The older man's face was pale. "What was he saying?" "Nothing," Greenhill said. He was already tearing meat from the carcass, shoving it into his mouth with both hands. "It was nothing. Eat." They fell on the wallaby like dogs. No manners, no sharing, no thought beyond the next bite. 8 pairs of hands ripped at the carcass, fighting for the choicest pieces. The haunches, the belly, the organs. Grease ran down their chins and their fingers and their wrists. They ate until their shrunken stomachs cramped, then ate more. Pearce ate with the rest of them. He couldn't help it. His body had taken over, drowning out every other thought with the single screaming imperative. Eat, eat, eat. He bit into a strip of thigh meat and nearly wept at the taste of it, rich and gamey and real. But even as he chewed, he couldn't shake the old man's eyes. That look of pity, those words repeated 3 times. He told himself it meant nothing. The ramblings of a savage, superstition. He almost believed it. They stayed at the camp through the night. For the first time in a week, they slept with something other than hunger gnawing at their insides. Pearce dreamed of Sarah Island, of the triangle, of the lash, of Sullivan's back splitting open, and woke with a gasp just before dawn. The fire had died. The rain had returned, and 3 of the men were gone. "Where?" he started. "Gone." Greenhill was sitting against a tree, the axe across his lap, watching the forest. He didn't seem surprised. "Dalton, Kennerly, Brown. They left an hour ago." "Left for where?" "Back." Greenhill's voice was flat. "They think they can make it to Sarah Island. Beg forgiveness. Take their lashes and go back to cutting timber." Cowards, Travers spat. He was standing now, fists clenched at his sides. Bloody cowards. We should have stopped them. Why? Greenhill asked. 3 fewer mouths to feed. 3 fewer men to slow us down. He smiled, but there was no warmth in it. The bush will take them. They'll never make it back. Pearce looked at the remaining men. Greenhill, Travers, Mather, Bodenham, himself. 5 now. 5 starving men with 1 axe and 200 miles still to walk. We should move, Mather said, before they change their minds and come back. The country changed as they walked. The dense nightmare of the horizontal gave way to open forest, tall eucalypts and wattle, button grass plains, creeks swollen with rainwater. It was easier terrain, but no less cruel. The rain never stopped. The cold never relented. And the wallaby meat, whatever comfort it had given, was burning through their systems faster than they could afford. By the 2nd day after the camp, hunger had returned. We need to hunt, Mather said. He had been saying it for hours, his voice growing sharper each time. There's game in these woods. I've seen tracks, possums, wallabies. We could catch something if we tried. With what? Greenhill asked. We have an axe, not a musket. You want to run down a wallaby on foot? I'm saying we have to do something, Mather pressed. We can't just walk until we drop. We walk until we reach the settlements, Greenhill said. That's the plan. That's always been the, plan. Your plan. Mather stopped walking. The others stopped too, spreading out in a loose circle. We've been following your plan for 2 weeks, Greenhill. And look at us. Half the group gone. The rest starving. Maybe it's time for a new plan. Greenhill turned slowly. The axe shifted in his grip, the blade catching what little light filtered through the clouds. You have something to say, Mather? Mather held his ground. He was almost as big as Greenhill, almost as strong. But he didn't have the axe. And in this wilderness, the axe was everything. I'm saying maybe we should vote, Mather said carefully. On what to do next, on who leads. Vote. Greenhill repeated the word like it tasted strange. You want to vote. It's only fair. We're all in this together. Together, Greenhill said. Yes, we are. He looked at each man in turn. Travers, who nodded. Bodenham, who dropped his eyes. Pearce, who kept his face carefully blank. Then he smiled. Fine, Greenhill said. We'll vote. But not today. Today we walk. Tonight we make camp. And tomorrow... He paused, letting the silence stretch. Tomorrow we'll decide what to do about food. They walked until dark, found a hollow beneath an overhanging rock that offered some shelter from the rain, built a small fire from wet wood that smoked more than it burned, and sat in silence, each man alone with his thoughts. Pearce watched the others through the smoke. Greenhill sat apart, the axe laid across his thighs, sharpening the blade with a stone he had found. The scraping sound was hypnotic, metal on rock, over and over, patient and purposeful. Travers sat beside him, whittling a stick with a piece of flint, though there was no reason for whittling except to keep his hands busy. Mather sat across the fire, his eyes never leaving Greenhill. The muscles in his jaw worked constantly, grinding his teeth in a rhythm that matched the scraping of the axe. And Bodenham had curled into a ball at the edge of the firelight. His shoulders shook with silent tears. He had barely spoken since the three men left. Something in him had broken, some last reserve of hope that had kept him moving. Now he was hollow. "We need to talk about food," Greenhill said quietly. No one responded. "We have nothing left. No leather, no game. We're at least 10 days from the settlements, maybe more. We can't make it like this." "Then what do you suggest?" Mather's voice was thick with suspicion. Greenhill was silent for a long moment. The firelight played across his face, turning his features into something inhuman, all angles and shadows and empty spaces. "We do what men have always done," he said finally, "when there's no other choice. We cast lots." "Lots," Pearce heard himself say. His voice sounded far away. For what? But he knew. They all knew. They had known since the moment Greenhill said, "What we have to do," in the tool shed. They had just refused to think it. "One man dies," Greenhill said. "The rest survive. It's the only way." Mather was on his feet before the last word faded. "You're mad. You're bloody mad. You won't what?" Greenhill rose too, the axe rising with him. "You won't do what's necessary? You'll just starve? You'll just lie down and die?" "I won't eat a man." "Then you'll die," Greenhill said simply. "And we'll eat you anyway." "Sit down, Mather," Travers said quietly. He hadn't moved, but his hand had found a rock the size of a fist. "Sit down and think." Mather's breath came in ragged gasps. His fists were clenched at his sides, trembling with rage or fear or both. For a long moment, Pearce was certain he would charge, that he would throw himself at Greenhill and die on the blade of that axe. Then, slowly, he sat. "Tomorrow," Greenhill said. He sat too, laying the axe back across his thighs. "Tomorrow morning, we draw lots, fair and square. God decides who dies." Pearce lay down on the cold stone and closed his eyes, but sleep wouldn't come. He kept hearing the old man's words. That phrase, repeated 3 times. He still didn't know what it meant, but he was beginning to understand. No one had slept. Pearce opened his eyes to find the others already sitting up, arranged in a loose circle around the dead fire. Their faces were masks, gray, hollow, stripped of everything except the animal need to survive another day. Greenhill sat with his back against the rock, the axe laid across his knees like a scepter. Travers crouched beside him, sharpening a stick into a point for no reason except to have something to do with his hands. Mather sat opposite, as far from Greenhill as the overhang allowed, his eyes fixed on some middle distance that existed only in his mind. And Bodenham. Bodenham hadn't moved from his curled position at the edge of the shelter. His body shook with tremors that had nothing to do with the cold. His eyes were open, but saw nothing. He had retreated to some place inside himself, some final refuge where the horror couldn't reach him. Pearce wondered if he would ever come back. "It's time," Greenhill said. No one responded. No one moved. The koan. Words hung in the air like smoke, refusing to dissipate. Greenhill reached into his shirt and pulled out 5 pieces of bark. He had prepared them during the night. Pearce had heard the tearing, the scraping, though he had pretended not to. 4 of the pieces were roughly the same length, perhaps 3 inches. The 5th was shorter, much shorter, less than an inch. "We each draw one," Greenhill said. His voice was calm, almost conversational. A man explaining the rules of a card game. "Short bark dies, the rest live. Simple." "And who holds the lots?" Mather asked. His voice was steady, but his hands were shaking. "You? How do we know you won't cheat?" "You don't," Greenhill said simply. "But I'll draw last. The 4 of you draw first, and whatever's left is mine. Fair enough?" Mather's jaw worked. He wanted to argue. Pearce could see it in every line of his body, but there was nothing to argue against. The system was as fair as it could be. The only alternative was to refuse, and refusal meant fighting Greenhill for the axe. No one wanted to fight Greenhill for the axe. "Fine," Mather said finally. "Fine. Let's get it done." Greenhill closed his fist around the bark pieces, shook them once, and held out his hand. The tops of the 5 pieces were visible, protruding from his grip at exactly the same height. Impossible to tell which was which. "Bodenham," Greenhill said. "You first." "I can't," Bodenham whispered. I can't. "You can," Greenhill said. "You will. Draw." Bodenham's hand moved like it belonged to someone else. It floated toward Greenhill's fist, trembling so violently that the fingers seemed to blur. He touched 1 piece of bark, then another, then a third, his hand dancing back and forth like a bird that couldn't decide where to land. "Draw," Greenhill repeated. Bodenham drew. He looked at the piece in his hand. His face crumpled. A sound came out of him that wasn't quite human, a wail that started low and rose, until it filled the overhang, bouncing off the stone walls, drowning out the rain. The bark was short, less than an inch. "No," Bodenham moaned. No, please, I'll do anything. I'll carry the axe. I'll find food. "It's done," Greenhill said. He opened his hand, letting the other 4 pieces of bark fall to the ground. All long. "God has decided." "God?" Mather's voice cracked. "You call this God?" "Call it what you like." Greenhill stood, the axe rising with him. "It's done." Pearce found himself on his feet without remembering standing. His body had moved on its own, driven by some instinct he didn't understand. He opened his mouth to speak, to say what he didn't know, but no words came. What could he say? Let him live? They would all die. Kill someone else? Who? Mather? Travers? Himself? There was nothing to say. There was nothing to do. The lots had been drawn. The decision had been made. Please, I have a mother. She's waiting for me. In London, she doesn't know where I am. Please, I'll never tell anyone about this. I swear on my life, please. Your life is mine now, Greenhill said quietly. I'm sorry. He didn't sound sorry. "Wait!" Everyone froze. The word had come from Mather, torn from his throat like something physical, something that had to escape or choke him. "Not like this," Mather said. His face was pale, his eyes wild. "Not while he's awake. Not while he's looking at us. I won't—" His voice broke. "I won't be part of that." Greenhill considered this. His head tilted slightly, like a bird examining something interesting on the ground. "You want to wait until he sleeps," Greenhill said. It wasn't a question. Mather nodded. He couldn't speak anymore. His throat had closed. "Fine." Greenhill stepped back from Bodenham, who had collapsed into a trembling heap on the stone floor. "Tonight, then. When he sleeps." They didn't travel that day. What was the point? They had no food regardless. They had only the grim arithmetic of survival. One man's death buying a few more days for the rest. Pearce sat with his back against the stone and tried not to think. But thought came anyway, unbidden, unwelcome. He thought about Bodenham's mother in London. Did she know her son was here, on the far side of the world, waiting to be slaughtered like livestock? Did she still pray for him at night, believing he might come home? He thought about the lots, about the sickening moment of relief when Bodenham had drawn the short bark, the rush of shameful gratitude that it wasn't him. He thought about what was coming. As the day wore on, Bodenham stopped crying. That was worse, somehow. The silence was worse than the sobbing. He sat motionless at the edge of the overhang, staring at the rain, his face blank. Once, around midday, he spoke. "Will it hurt?" No one answered. "Will it hurt?" Bodenham asked again. His voice was calm now, eerily calm. The voice of a man who had accepted something unacceptable. "The axe. Is it sharp? Will it be quick?" "It's sharp," Greenhill said. "It'll be quick." Bodenham nodded slowly. "Thank you," he said. That's good." He didn't speak again. The darkness came slowly, like a tide rising. Pearce watched it fill the spaces between the trees, creep across the ground, swallow the world piece by piece until only the small circle of firelight remained. Bodenham lay down near the fire. He had stopped trembling, stopped crying, stopped being, in some fundamental way, the man he had been before. He closed his eyes, and his breathing gradually slowed. Greenhill waited. He waited until Bodenham's chest rose and fell with the unmistakable cadence of unconsciousness, until the young forger from London had drifted away from this world, from this nightmare, into whatever dreams the dying dream. Then Greenhill stood. Pearce watched. He didn't want to watch, but he couldn't look away. Some terrible compulsion held his eyes open, forced them to witness what was about to happen. Travers was watching too, leaning forward slightly, a hungry light in his eyes. Mather had turned away. His shoulders were hunched, his face hidden in his hands. "Forgive me," Greenhill whispered. Then he raised the axe. Bodenham never woke. He never felt a thing. That, at least, was a mercy. Pearce closed his eyes. But it was too late. The sound was inside him now. It would be inside him forever. "It's done," Greenhill said. His voice was steady, unchanged, the voice of a man who had just chopped firewood. "Help me with the body." Pearce ate. He didn't want to. Every part of him that was still human, still civilized, still the boy who had grown up in County Fermanagh, going to church on Sundays, screamed at him to stop, to refuse, to die with whatever dignity he had left. But his body had other ideas. His hands reached for the meat without his permission. His jaw worked without his consent. His stomach accepted what was offered with a gratitude that made him want to vomit. They ate in silence. 4 men who had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. When it was over, Greenhill stood and wiped his hands on his trousers. "We move in an hour," he said. "There's enough to carry. We'll make good time now." No one argued. No one spoke at all. They were beyond speech now, beyond anything recognizable as humanity. They were survivors. 3 days passed. 3 days of walking, of rain, of silence so thick it pressed against the ears like water. The men moved through the forest in single file. Greenhill first, always first, with the axe across his shoulder. Travers second, watchful, loyal. Pearce third, his mind somewhere far away. And Mather last, bringing up the rear with his eyes fixed permanently on Greenhill's back. They didn't speak of Bodenham. They didn't speak of what they carried in the bark bundles. They didn't speak at all, except when necessary. Stop here, climb that, the river's that way. The food helped. Pearce hated that it helped, hated that his legs moved stronger now, that his vision had cleared, that the gnawing emptiness in his belly had retreated. His body didn't care where the strength came from. His body only knew that it was no longer dying. But his mind knew. His mind remembered everything. On the 3rd night after Bodenham, they camped beneath an enormous fallen eucalyptus. Its trunk had crashed against a boulder, creating a natural lean-to that offered some shelter from the rain. Greenhill built a fire, while Travers unwrapped what remained of their provisions. It wasn't much. A few strips of dried meat. Enough for another day. Maybe 2. "We need to ration," Greenhill said, dividing the strips into 4 unequal piles. The largest went to himself. The second largest to Travers. The remaining 2 roughly equal to Pearce and Mather. Mather stared at his portion. His jaw tightened. "That's not fair," he said quietly. "What?" Greenhill looked up, his eyes flat in the firelight. "I said that's not fair." Mather pointed at Greenhill's pile. "You've given yourself twice what I have. Travers, too." "I carry the axe," Greenhill said calmly. "I do the work. I eat more." "What work? Bodenham was asleep. You could have swung that axe left-handed." "Careful, Mather." "Or what?" Mather rose to his feet. He was shaking, with rage or hunger, or both. "You'll kill me too? Add me to the menu?" "Sit down," Travers said. His voice was soft, almost gentle, which made it worse somehow. "Sit down and eat your share." "My share?" Mather laughed, a brittle, broken sound. "My share of what? Of Thomas Bodenham? Of a boy who never hurt anyone, who just wanted to go home to his mother?" "You ate him too," Greenhill said quietly. "Don't pretend you didn't. Don't pretend you're better than the rest of us." Mather's face contorted. For a moment, Pearce thought he would attack, throw himself at Greenhill regardless of the axe, regardless of Travers, regardless of everything. The muscles in his neck were corded tight, his breathing ragged. Then something in him collapsed. "God forgive us," Mather whispered. He sat down heavily, his legs folding beneath him. "God forgive us all." They ate. What else could they do? Pearce forced down his portions strip by strip, not tasting, not thinking. He had learned to separate his mind from his body, to let his hands and jaw and throat do what they needed to do, while the rest of him floated somewhere far above, watching like a stranger. It was the only way to survive. But Mather was not built for separation. As he ate, tears rolled down his cheeks and into his beard. He didn't bother to wipe them away. He just chewed and wept, until his portion was gone. "I was a Protestant," Mather said suddenly. His voice was thick, clogged with grief. "Back in Antrim, I went to church every Sunday. I believed in heaven and hell. I believed..." He broke off, swallowing hard. "I believed God was watching." "God isn't here," Greenhill said. He was cleaning his teeth with a splinter of wood, casual as a man after Sunday dinner. "God stayed in England. This is just us." "You don't believe in anything," Mather said. It wasn't a question. "I believe in survival." Greenhill flicked the splinter into the fire. "I believe in doing what needs to be done. The rest is just words." "And when we reach the settlements? When we're back among civilized men? What then? Then we never speak of this again. We find a ship. We sail away. We become new men with new names in a new country. And Thomas Bodenham becomes bones in the bush, like 1,000 other bones." Mather stared at him with something between horror and fascination. "You've thought about this," he said slowly. "You planned this from the beginning." "I planned to survive," Greenhill said. "Whatever that took." Mather looked at Travers, then at Pearce, searching for some sign of shared outrage. But Travers only shrugged, and Pearce kept his eyes on the fire. "You're all mad," Mather breathed. "Every one of you." "Maybe," Greenhill agreed. "But we're alive, and tomorrow we'll still be alive. Can you say the same for the men who stayed on Sarah Island?" Mather had no answer. He lay down with his back to the fire, curled into himself, and didn't speak again. By the 5th day after Bodenham, the food was gone. They had stretched it as far as it would go, smaller portions, longer intervals, chewing each piece until it dissolved. But the human body can only be tricked for so long. Hunger returned like an old enemy, settling into their bellies with a familiar weight. "We need to hunt," Mather said. He had been saying it all morning, his voice growing more insistent each time. There's game here. I've seen signs, wallaby droppings, possum scratches on the trees. Then hunt, Greenhill said without slowing. Catch something. I'll wait. With what? My bare hands? Give me the axe. I can make a trap, a deadfall, something. Greenhill stopped walking. He turned slowly, the axe shifting in his grip. You want the axe? I want to eat something that isn't. Mather stopped himself. Swallowed. I want to hunt. That's all. The axe stays with me. Why? Because you don't trust me? Because the axe stays with me. Greenhill's voice was flat, final. That's the only reason you need. Mather's face darkened. His hands curled into fists at his sides. For a long moment he stood there, vibrating with rage that had nowhere to go. Then he turned and walked away. Not forward, not backward. Sideways, into the scrub, disappearing behind a screen of ferns. Let him go, Travers said. He'll be back when he's hungry enough. He's hungry now, Pearce said quietly. He didn't know why he was defending Mather. The man had barely spoken to him since the escape. But something in the exchange had bothered him. Something in Greenhill's calm refusal. We all are. Then we'll deal with that, Greenhill said. When the time comes. Mather returned an hour later. His hands were empty. His face was a mask of frustration. Nothing, he said flatly. Couldn't get close enough. Greenhill didn't respond. He just kept walking. That night, the hunger dreams came. Pearce had had them before, in the prisons, in the holds of the transport ships on Sarah Island during the weeks, when rations were cut. Dreams of food, dreams of meat and bread and fruit, laid out on endless tables, always just out of reach. He would wake with his mouth watering and his stomach clenched like a fist. But these dreams were different. He dreamed of Bodenham. The young forger stood at the edge of a great fire, his body whole and unmarked, smiling that nervous smile he had worn in the tool shed. He held out a piece of bread toward Pearce. Good bread, white bread, the kind they had in London. Take it, Bodenham said. I don't need it anymore. Pearce reached for the bread, but when his fingers touched it, it crumbled into ash. Where's Mather? Pearce asked. Greenhill nodded toward the darkness beyond the firelight. Went to piss. 20 minutes ago. 20 minutes? Give or take. Greenhill's hand rested on the axe. I've been counting. Mather burst through the ferns. His face was wild, his eyes too bright. In his hands he clutched something, a rock, jagged and dark. I found it, he gasped. I found a way. Found what? Travers was on his feet, his sharpened stick in hand. Obsidian. Volcanic glass. Mather held up the rock. I can make a blade, a knife, something to hunt with, something to... He stopped. He was looking at Greenhill, at the axe, at the way Greenhill's fingers had tightened around the handle. Put it down, Greenhill said quietly. It's just a rock. I can... Put it down. Mather's face crumpled. All the fight went out of him in a single breath. We can't go on like this, he whispered. We're eating each other, Greenhill. Literally eating each other. There has to be another way. There isn't. Greenhill kicked the obsidian into the darkness. "There's only the way forward, and you'd better pray we find the settlements before the food runs out again." Mather stood there for a long moment, trembling. Then he walked to his sleeping spot, lay down, and turned his back to the fire. He didn't close his eyes. Pearce lay back down. But sleep wouldn't come. He watched Mather's back. He watched Greenhill watching Mather's back. And he understood, with a cold certainty, that the food would run out soon, and when it did, there would be another lottery, unless someone struck first. 2 more days. 2 days of walking through country that seemed to repeat itself endlessly. The same gray trees, the same gray sky, the same gray despair settling over them like a shroud. The mountains they had been using as landmarks grew closer, but not close enough. The settlements remained a rumor, a prayer, a lie they told themselves to keep their legs moving. And the hunger was a living thing now. It moved through their bodies like a parasite, consuming them from the inside out. Pearce could feel it eating his muscles, his fat, his organs, cannibalizing his own flesh to keep his heart beating. His vision blurred at the edges. His thoughts came slowly, swimming through a fog that grew thicker by the hour. Mather was the worst. He had stopped eating his full portion 2 nights ago. Some last gesture of defiance, or perhaps just his stomach refusing to accept what his mind couldn't bear. Now he moved like a ghost, his feet dragging, his arms hanging limp at his sides. "Keep up," Greenhill called back. He didn't slow down. He never slowed down. "I'm trying," Mather mumbled. The words were barely audible. Travers dropped back to walk beside Mather. His hand rested on the sharpened stick at his belt. "You need to eat," Travers said quietly. "When we stop tonight, you need to eat everything you're given." "I can't," Mather's voice cracked. "I can't keep doing this." "Then you won't have to do it much longer." That night, they found no shelter. The rain came down in sheets, cold and relentless, and they huddled beneath a stand of tree ferns that offered no real protection. The fire they built sputtered and hissed, producing more smoke than heat. "We need to talk," Greenhill said. "There's nothing left," Greenhill continued. "We finished the last of it yesterday. We're still 5 days from the settlements, maybe more. We won't make it." "You don't know that," Mather said. His voice was hoarse, barely a whisper. "We could find game. We won't find game." Greenhill cut him off, his voice flat. "We haven't found game in 2 weeks. The bush is empty, Mather. There's nothing out here but us." Pearce felt his stomach clench. He knew what was coming. They all knew what was coming. "So we cast lots again," Greenhill said. "Tonight. One more time." "No," Mather said. He was shaking his head, his whole body trembling. No. I won't do it. I won't be part of it." "You're already part of it." Greenhill's eyes were cold. "You ate Bodenham same as the rest of us. You're already damned. Might as well be damned and alive." "I won't draw," Mather said. "I refuse. You can't make me." "If you don't draw," Travers said softly. Then you volunteer. Mather's head snapped toward Travers. His eyes were wild, the whites visible all around. That's not fair, that's not… Fair? Greenhill laughed, a short, ugly sound. We're eating each other, Mather. We're past fair. We're past everything. There's just alive and dead now. Pick which one you want to be. Greenhill had kept them. Of course he had kept them. 4 pieces now instead of 5. 3 long, 1 short. He shook them in his fist, the sound soft and obscene. We draw in order, Mather, Pearce, Travers, then me, same as before. Short bark dies. Please, Mather whispered. Please, there has to be another way. There isn't. Draw. Pearce watched Mather's hand move toward Greenhill's fist. It shook so badly that it seemed to vibrate, the fingers twitching independently of each other. Time stretched. The rain fell. The fire died. Mather drew. He looked at the piece in his hand. Long. Thank God, Mather gasped. Thank God, thank God. Pearce stepped forward. His turn. He looked at the 3 pieces protruding from Greenhill's fist. 2 long, 1 short. A 1 in 3 chance. Better odds than Mather had faced, but the mathematics of death offered no comfort. He reached out. His fingers touched the centerpiece. Something told him to change, to pick another, but his hand wouldn't obey. He closed his fingers and pulled. Long. Travers didn't hesitate. He reached into Greenhill's fist with the casual confidence of a man drawing cards at a gaming table. His fingers closed. He pulled. Long. All eyes turned to Greenhill. 1 piece remained in his fist. He hadn't drawn yet. But everyone knew, everyone could see, that the piece he held was short. Greenhill opened his fist. Short bark. Less than an inch. Greenhill looked at it for a long moment. His face was unreadable, calm perhaps, or simply empty. Then he looked up at the others and smiled. Well, he said, that's interesting. You drew short, Mather said. His voice was trembling, but there was something else in it now. Hope, perhaps, or vengeance. You have to… I have to what? Greenhill's smile widened. Kill myself? Hand you the axe so you can do it? Those are the rules, Mather insisted. Your rules. God decides, you said. God has decided. God decided I should hold the axe. Greenhill raised the weapon, letting the blade catch the gray light. And the man with the axe makes the rules. You never meant to honor the lots, Pearce said quietly. The realization moved through him like cold water. Not if they fell against you. The lots are for weak men, Greenhill said. For men who need to believe God is watching. I don't need that. I know exactly what I am. So what now? Mather's voice was rising, cracking. You just kill whoever you want? Whenever you're hungry? I kill whoever threatens my survival. Greenhill lowered the axe, resting it on his shoulder. Right now, that's no one. We're all useful. We can all walk. But soon, he shrugged. Soon, one of us won't be useful anymore. And when that happens, I won't need lots. I'll just need the axe. Mather looked at Pearce. His eyes were pleading, desperate, searching for an ally. But what could Pearce do? Greenhill had the axe. Travers had the stick. 2 against 2. But the weapons made it no contest at all. "We keep walking," Greenhill said. He turned and began to move through the rain, not waiting to see if the others followed. "Sunrise, we head east. With luck, we'll find something to eat before anyone has to die." Travers followed, glancing back once with a cold smile. Mather and Pearce stood alone in the rain, watching them go. "He'll kill us both," Mather whispered. "You know that. When the hunger comes back, he'll kill us both." "Maybe," Pearce said. "We have to do something. We have to survive." Pearce started walking, following the others into the gray forest. That's all. That's everything. The food ran out. The walking continued. And Mather began to fall behind. It started slowly, a few extra steps between him and the others, a few extra seconds to catch his breath when they paused. But by noon, he was 20 yards back, and by afternoon, he was struggling to keep them in sight. "Leave him," Travers said quietly to Greenhill. "He's done." "Not yet." Greenhill glanced back at Mather's stumbling figure. "He can still walk. When he can't walk, then he's done." They made camp early that evening, beneath a rock ledge that offered some shelter. Mather arrived 20 minutes after the others, collapsed against a boulder, and didn't move. "Get up," Greenhill said. "Help with the fire." Mather didn't respond. His eyes were open, but they saw nothing. His chest rose and fell in shallow, rapid breaths. "He's finished," Travers said. "Look at him. He won't last the night." "We should let him sleep," Greenhill said. The words were almost gentle. "Let him go peacefully." "Like Bodenham," Travers agreed. Pearce said nothing. There was nothing to say. Mather was dying anyway. The hunger had won, had hollowed him out until there was nothing left but a shell. This would be a mercy. That's what he told himself. Mather died in his sleep, like Bodenham before him. The axe fell once. There was a sound, wet, final, and then silence. Pearce kept his eyes closed. He didn't need to see. He had seen enough. "Help me," Greenhill said. His voice was steady, businesslike. "We do this quickly. We eat well tomorrow." Pearce helped. His hands moved on their own, guided by some part of him that had abandoned morality in favor of survival. He didn't think about Mather, about the man's mother in Antrim, about his Protestant faith, about the tears he had wept while eating Bodenham. He just worked. When it was done, Greenhill wiped his hands on his trousers and looked at Pearce. "Just the 3 of us now," he said. "We're close to the settlements. Another week, maybe less. We might actually make it." "Might," Pearce repeated. "Depends on how hungry we get." Greenhill smiled. "And how useful you stay." 3 men now, 1 axe, and a week of walking through country that had already taken 5 lives. Pearce lay down and closed his eyes, but he didn't sleep. He couldn't afford to sleep. Not anymore. Because he understood now what Mather had understood too late. The man with the axe didn't need lots. He didn't need God. He only needed hunger. And hunger always came back. The country changed. The endless gray forest gave way to open woodland, stands of eucalyptus separated by clearings of button grass, creeks running clear over stone beds, the sky visible for the first time in weeks. The mountains that had loomed as distant shadows now rose sharp and close, their peaks dusted with snow. And somewhere beyond those peaks, civilization. 2 days, Greenhill said, studying the ridgeline ahead. Maybe 3. We crossed that pass, and we're in shepherd country. Travers laughed, a genuine sound, perhaps the first since Sarah Island. We're going to make it. I didn't think... He stopped, shook his head. I didn't think we would. We haven't made it yet, Pearce said quietly. But we will. Travers clapped him on the shoulder, a gesture that might have been friendly if his hand hadn't lingered a moment too long, testing the muscle beneath. The 3 of us, survivors. They had food. Mather's remains, wrapped in bark and distributed among them, would last another 4 days, if they were careful. More than enough to reach the settlements. More than enough to become new men with new names in a new world. All they had to do was keep walking. The climb was brutal. After weeks of horizontal walking, their legs screamed at the vertical assault. Pearce's thighs burned with every step, his lungs heaving in the thin air. But he pushed on, driven by something stronger than pain. He was going to live. For the first time since escaping Sarah Island, he believed it. He was going to walk out of this wilderness, find a ship, sail away from Van Diemen's Land forever. The faces of the dead, Bodenham, Mather, the others who had turned back, they would fade in time. The memories would blur. He would build a new life, and this nightmare would become nothing more than a story he never told. He believed it right up until Travers screamed. "Snake!" Travers fell backward, crashing against the rocks, his hand scrabbling at the thing wrapped around his leg. It was long, 3 feet at least, its body banded with dark stripes, its head buried in his calf. Tiger snake. Greenhill moved with terrifying speed. The axe flashed down once, twice, and the snake's body separated into pieces that writhed independently for a moment before going still. But the damage was done. "Let me see," Greenhill said, dropping to his knees beside his friend. The bite was bad. The puncture marks were deep, and the flesh around them was already changing color, reddening, swelling, taking on a mottled quality that spoke of poison moving through the blood. "It's not deep," Travers said. His voice was tight with pain and denial. "It barely got me. I'll be fine." "Can you walk?" Greenhill asked. Travers tried to stand. His leg buckled immediately, and he fell against a boulder, his face gray. "Give me a minute," he gasped. "Just give me a minute." A minute became an hour. An hour became 3. By nightfall, Travers couldn't stand at all. The swelling had spread from his calf to his knee, and his entire leg had turned a deep, ugly purple. He was sweating despite the cold, shaking with fever, his eyes unfocused. "We can't stay here," Pearce said quietly to Greenhill. They had built a small fire in the shelter of a rock formation, but the wind cut through it like it wasn't there. "We're too exposed. If a storm comes..." "I know." Greenhill was watching Travers, his face unreadable. "But he can't walk." "Matthew," Travers mumbled. "Matthew, is that you?" He was talking to his brother, the brother who had died on the voyage from England, buried at sea somewhere in the Atlantic. "He's dying," Pearce said. "Not yet." Greenhill's jaw tightened. "He's strong. He might fight through it." "Look at him, Greenhill. The poison's in his blood. His organs are failing. He won't last the night." "He's my friend," Greenhill said quietly. "The only friend I've had since England." "I know." He stood by me when the others wouldn't. When Mather questioned me. When Bodenham drew the short bark, Travers never wavered. "He trusted me," Greenhill continued, "with his life." Pearce said nothing. There was nothing to say. The man who had killed without remorse, who had eaten his companions without flinching, who had smiled while drawing lots, that man was now watching his only friend die, and something in him was breaking. "I won't leave him," Greenhill said. "Not while he's still alive." Then we wait. Travers died 2 hours before dawn. Pearce heard it happen. The change in the rhythm of his breathing, the long pause that stretched too long, the silence that followed. He watched Greenhill lean forward, press 2 fingers against Travers's throat, and hold them there for a long moment. "Gone," Greenhill said. His voice was flat. "I'm sorry," Pearce said. He wasn't sure if he meant it. He wasn't sure if he could mean anything anymore. Greenhill didn't respond. He sat motionless for several minutes, staring at his friend's body. The snow accumulated on his shoulders, in his hair, but he didn't brush it away. Then he stood. "We need to move," he said. His voice was steady now, the emotion sealed away again. "The storm will bury us if we stay." "What about—" Pearce hesitated. "What about him?" "He would want us to survive," Greenhill said quietly. "He would understand." Pearce closed his eyes. He didn't want to watch. But even with his eyes closed, he heard everything. The sounds of the axe, the sounds of preparation, the sounds of Greenhill doing what needed to be done. When he opened them again, Travers was in pieces, wrapped in bark like the others before him. "Carry half," Greenhill said, handing Pearce a bundle. His face was blank, empty, a mask that showed nothing. "It'll see us through the pass." They left what remained of Travers beneath a pile of stones. Not a burial, just a marker. Something to show that a man had died here, even if no one would ever know his name. Greenhill stood over the cairn for a moment, his head bowed. His lips moved, but no sound came out. A prayer, perhaps, or a curse, or simply words he couldn't speak aloud. Then he turned and began to climb. The pass was a nightmare. Snow came up to their knees, then their thighs. The wind tore at their clothes, their skin, their sanity. Visibility dropped to nothing. Pearce could barely see Greenhill's back, even walking 3 feet behind him. But they pushed on. "There!" Greenhill shouted over the wind. "The other side." Pearce looked up. Through a break in the blizzard, he could see it, the pass cresting, the ground beginning to slope downward, the snow thinning. They had made it. They half walked, half slid down the far side of the mountain. The snow gave way to mud, the mud to grass, the grass to the first green Pearce had seen in weeks. The air grew warmer. The sky lightened. By evening, they had descended into a valley dotted with tree ferns and grazing wallabies. 5 days, Greenhill said. He was staring at the valley, at the game that moved through it, at the land that might actually sustain them. Maybe 4. There'll be shepherd huts, farms, people. They made camp beside a creek that ran clear and cold. They ate some of what they carried. Pearce no longer thought about what it was, what it had been, and they drank deeply from the stream. "We're going to make it," Pearce said. Greenhill looked at him across the fire. His eyes were hollow, empty, the eyes of a man who had left pieces of himself scattered across 100 miles of wilderness. "Maybe," he said. "We have food. We have water. We're through the worst of it." "The worst of it," Greenhill smiled, but there was no humor in it. "You think what's behind us is the worst of it?" "What do you mean?" Greenhill stared into the fire, the flames reflected in his eyes, dancing. "When we reach the settlements," he said slowly, "what do you think happens? We just walk into town? Find a ship? Sail away?" "They'll be looking for us," Greenhill continued. 8 convicts escaped from Sarah Island. The whole colony will know. The moment we show our faces, someone will recognize us. Someone will talk. Then we stay hidden. Travel at night. Find a ship that doesn't ask questions. 2 men traveling together, starving, ragged, carrying bundles of dried meat. Greenhill's smile widened. "You don't think they'll wonder where the meat came from? What happened to the other 6? So what are you saying?" Greenhill was silent for a long moment. The fire crackled between them. "I'm saying 1 man traveling alone is less suspicious than 2, he said finally. "I'm saying 1 man can move faster, hide easier, survive longer. You're saying you want to kill me. I'm saying I'm thinking about it." Greenhill's hand rested on the axe. "I've been thinking about it since Travers died." "But not tonight," Greenhill said. He lay back against his pack, the axe still within reach. "Tonight we sleep. Tomorrow we walk. And when we get close to the settlements," he closed his eyes, "we'll see what happens." Pearce didn't sleep. He sat by the fire, watching Greenhill, his hand never far from the rock at his side. 2 men left. 1 axe, and a reckoning coming that neither could avoid. They walked in silence. The silence had a different quality now, not the exhausted quiet of the previous weeks, but something sharper, watchful. Each man aware that the other was calculating, measuring, waiting for the moment when the equation shifted. Pearce kept 3 paces behind Greenhill, close enough to see him, far enough to react if the axe swung. His hand stayed near his belt, where he had tucked a stone the size of his fist. It wasn't much against an axe, but it was something. "Smoke," Greenhill said, stopping abruptly. Pearce smelled it too. Wood smoke, drifting on the breeze from somewhere ahead. Not a forest fire. Something smaller, controlled, a chimney. "Shepherd's hut," Greenhill murmured. "Maybe a farm? People." "Yes." Greenhill's jaw tightened. People who will ask questions. People who might recognize escaped convicts. "We need food," Pearce said carefully. "Real food. We can trade, or..." "Trade what? We have nothing but the clothes on our backs. And..." Greenhill paused, glancing at the bark bundles they carried. "And cargo that would see us hanged." "What do you want to do?" Pearce asked. Greenhill studied him for a long moment. His eyes moved from Pearce's face to his hand, noting the position, understanding the threat. "We scout first," Greenhill said finally. "See who's there. How many. Whether they have weapons." He smiled, thin and cold. "Then we decide." The shepherd was old, 60 at least, maybe more, with a white beard that reached his chest and a back bent from decades of labor. He worked slowly, methodically, splitting logs with the practiced rhythm of a man who had done this 10,000 times before. He was alone. "No dogs," Greenhill whispered. "No other buildings. Just him. He might have a musket inside." "Might." Greenhill's eyes were fixed on the hut, calculating. "But he's old, slow, and there are two of us." "We don't have to hurt him," Pearce said quietly. "We can wait until he sleeps, think what we need and go. And if he wakes? If he sees our faces? If he rides to the nearest settlement and describes 2 starving men who stole his bread?" "He's old. He might not." "He might." Greenhill's voice was flat. "And might is a risk I'm not willing to take." "Wait here," Greenhill said. He began to rise. "Greenhill, wait here." His voice was iron. "Watch the tree line. If anyone else comes, whistle twice. I'll handle the old man." Pearce watched him go. He could stop this. He could shout a warning, alert the shepherd, give the old man a chance to run or fight. He could do something. But he didn't. He told himself it was because of the axe, because Greenhill would kill him if he interfered, because survival required sacrifice. He told himself a lot of things. The shepherd straightened. Perhaps he heard something. Perhaps he felt the presence behind him. He began to turn. Pearce closed his eyes. But closing his eyes didn't stop the sounds. The heavy thud of a body hitting the ground, the wet gurgle of a man drowning in his own blood, the silence that followed. When he opened them, Greenhill was standing over the shepherd's body, wiping the axe blade on the old man's shirt. "It's done," Greenhill called. "Come on." The hut was a treasure trove. Salted mutton, hard cheese, dried apples, flour, tea. Real food. Food that didn't come from the bodies of their companions. Pearce fell on it like a man possessed, shoving bread into his mouth with both hands, barely chewing before swallowing. Greenhill ate more slowly, methodically, his eyes moving constantly to the windows, the door, the forest beyond. "We can't stay long," he said between bites. "Someone will come looking for him eventually. A neighbor, a supply rider. We take what we can carry and we go." "The settlements," Pearce said. "How far?" "A day, maybe 2. Greenhill tore off another piece of bread. "We follow the creek downstream. It'll lead to farms, then a village. From there, we find the coast." "And then?" "Ships. Greenhill's eyes met his across the table. Ships that ask no questions. Ships that sail to places where no one knows our names. They ate until they couldn't eat anymore. Then they gathered supplies, as much as they could carry without slowing down. Blankets, a flint, a small knife, more food, wrapped in cloth and stuffed into makeshift packs. Pearce found a coat hanging by the door. Thick wool, warm, the shepherd's Sunday best. He put it on. It smelled like pipe tobacco and wood smoke and the life of a man he had helped kill. "We should go," Greenhill said. He was standing at the door, looking out at the clearing. The shepherd's body was still there, a dark shape in the grass. Before dark. "What about—" Pearce gestured toward the body. "Leave him. Let the animals have him." Greenhill's voice was casual, dismissive. "It's more than the others got." They made camp a mile from the hut, beside the creek Greenhill had mentioned. The water ran clean and cold, and for the first time in weeks, Pearce drank without fear of poison or parasites. The food sat heavy in his stomach, not unpleasantly, but strangely. His body had forgotten what it felt like to be full. His mind had forgotten what it felt like to have hope. "Tomorrow," Greenhill said. He was sitting across the fire, his back against a tree, the axe beside him. "Tomorrow we reach the farms. From there, it's just a matter of keeping our heads down. And our story straight. We're shepherds ourselves," Greenhill said. "Looking for work. Got lost in the bush, ran out of food, barely survived. It's close enough to the truth." "And the others? If they ask about the escape?" "What escape? We never heard of any escape. We've been in the back country for months. No news reaches us out here?" "They'll check. Let them check. They'll find nothing. The bush swallowed the evidence." Greenhill smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "The bush swallows everything eventually." Pearce lay back on his blanket and stared at the stars. They were the same stars he had seen from Ireland, from the transport ship, from Sarah Island. The same stars that had watched Bodenham die, and Mather, and Travers, and the shepherd, whose name they would never know. The stars didn't care. The stars never cared. "Greenhill," Pearce said quietly. "What?" "Back there. The old man. He didn't have to die." "No," Greenhill agreed. "He didn't have to, but he did. And because he did, we're alive, we're fed, and tomorrow we'll be free." He paused. "You can hate me for it if you want, but don't pretend you would have done anything different." "We're the same now," Greenhill continued. "You and me. We've crossed the same lines, broken the same laws, eaten the same flesh. Whatever I am, you are too." "I'm not like you," Pearce said. "No?" Greenhill's voice was almost gentle. "Then why are you still alive?" Pearce didn't answer. He couldn't answer, because somewhere in the darkest part of himself, he knew Greenhill was right. He was still alive because he had let others die. Because he had eaten what he had to eat. Because when the moment came to be human, he had chosen to be animal instead. And tomorrow, he would walk into civilization wearing a dead man's coat, with the taste of his companions still on his tongue, and pretend to be someone who deserved to live. He didn't sleep, not for a long time, but eventually exhaustion won. His eyes closed, his breathing slowed, and the nightmares came, as they always did now. In the dreams, the dead were waiting. Bodenham, Mather, Travers, the old shepherd. They stood in a line, watching him with empty eyes, their mouths moving but no sound coming out. He couldn't hear what they were saying. He didn't want to hear, but he knew, even in the dream, that he would hear them eventually. For the rest of his life, he would hear them. The road changed everything. It was barely more than a track, 2 ruts carved by cartwheels through the mud. But to Pearce, it might as well have been paved with gold. Roads led somewhere. Roads meant people, settlements, ships. Roads meant escape. "Stay off it," Greenhill said, pulling back into the tree line. "We follow alongside. If we hear a cart coming, we hide." They hid 3 times that morning. Once for a supply wagon driven by a weathered farmer. Once for a group of stockmen on horseback, laughing and joking as they passed. Once for a woman walking alone, a basket on her arm, singing to herself in a language that might have been Irish. Each time, they pressed themselves into the brush and waited, barely breathing, watching the road through screens of leaves. "Too many people," Greenhill muttered after the stockmen disappeared around a bend. "We're getting close to something. A village. A station. Isn't that what we want?" "Yes and no," Greenhill said slowly. "We need supplies. Information. Maybe a horse if we can steal one. But we can't be seen together." "What do you mean?" Greenhill turned to face him. The axe was still strapped across his back, but his hand moved to rest on the handle. 2 escaped convicts traveling together is twice as suspicious as 1. If someone recognizes us, if someone raises the alarm, he shook his head. "We need to split up." "Split up," Pearce repeated. "You go into the village, scout it out, find where the ships dock, when they leave, where they're headed. I'll wait here, out of sight." "And if I don't come back?" Greenhill smiled. It was the same thin smile he had worn when drawing lots, when discussing Bodenham's death, when explaining why the shepherd had to die. "Then I'll know you betrayed me," he said quietly. "And I'll find you. Wherever you go, whatever ship you board, I'll find you. And I'll do to you what I did to the others. I'm not going to betray you. No, you're not." Greenhill's hand tightened on the axe. "Because you know what I'm capable of. And you know I don't make idle threats." "Fine," Pearce said. "I'll scout the village, but I want something in return." "What?" "The axe stays here. You wait without it." "You think I'm stupid?" "I think if I'm going into that village alone, risking my neck while you hide in the trees, I deserve some insurance." Pearce held his ground. "The axe stays, or I don't go." Greenhill's jaw worked. His eyes never left Pearce's face, searching for weakness, for deception, for any sign that this was a trick. "If you run, I won't run. If you betray me, I won't betray you." Pearce stepped closer, his voice dropping. "We've walked too far together, Greenhill. We've done too much. The only way either of us survives is if we both survive. You know that as well as I do." "The axe stays," Greenhill said finally. He unstrapped it from his back and leaned it against a tree. "But if you're not back by nightfall, I come looking, and I won't be happy." "Nightfall," Pearce agreed. "I'll be back." He turned toward the road, took one step, two. "Pearce." He looked back. Greenhill stood in a shaft of morning light, his face half-shadowed, his hands loose at his sides. "Remember what I said about being the same?" "I remember." "Good." Greenhill's smile returned, thin and cold. "Then you understand why I'm trusting you. Because I know you. I know what's inside you. And I know you won't risk losing everything we've suffered for." Pearce turned away without answering. He walked toward the road, stepped onto the packed earth, and began moving toward the smoke rising in the distance. He didn't look back. The village was called Westbury. Pearce learned this from the sign at the crossroads, painted in faded letters on a board that had seen better days. It was a small place, a way station for farmers and shepherds, a stopping point on the road between the coast and the interior. It was also full of people. More people than Pearce had seen in 2 months. They moved through the street in ones and twos, stopping to talk, to trade, to argue about the price of wool. They looked at him as he passed. Curious glances. Nothing more. And he forced himself to nod, to smile, to act like a man who belonged. He found what he needed at the general store, a map pinned to the wall behind the counter, showing the coast, the settlements, the roads connecting them. Hobart Town was 3 days east by horse. Launceston was 2 days north. Both had harbors. Both had ships. "Help you, friend?" The man was middle-aged, round-faced, with the cheerful expression of someone who had never known real hardship. He smiled at Pearce with the practiced warmth of a merchant. "Just looking," Pearce said. His voice sounded strange to his own ears, rusty, unused. "Trying to get my bearings." "Lost, are you? Easy enough to do out here. Where are you headed?" "Coast, looking for work on the ships." "Sailor? Something like that?" Pearce forced a smile. "Been working the interior, shepherding. Ready for a change." "Ships come through Hobart regular. Launceston too, but less frequent. You want passage somewhere? Hobart's your best bet." "How far?" 3 days if you've got a horse. Week on foot." The shopkeeper leaned on the counter, warming to the conversation. "You traveling alone?" "Alone now," Pearce said carefully. "Had a partner, but we parted ways a few days back. Disagreement over payment." "Always the way?" The shopkeeper shook his head sympathetically. "Can't trust anyone these days. You hear about the trouble over at Sarah Island?" "Sarah Island?" "The penal settlement, out past Macquarie Harbor." The shopkeeper's voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper. 8 convicts escaped. 2 months ago now. Word is they headed into the bush, trying to cross to the settlements. What happened to them? What happens to everyone who goes into that country? The bush ate them. They found 3 of them dead a few weeks back. Starved, frozen, half-eaten by devils. The other 5 never turned up. Probably bones by now, scattered across the mountains. "Terrible," Pearce said. "Terrible." "Serve them right, I say. You don't escape Sarah Island. No one does. The shopkeeper straightened, cheerful again. Now, you need supplies? I've got good prices on everything a traveler might need. I'll think about it. Pearce moved toward the door, needing air, needing space. Thank you for the information. Any time, friend. Safe travels. They thought they were dead. The authorities, the settlers, everyone. They assumed the bush had claimed them. No one was looking. No one was hunting. The escape had been written off as another failure. Another cautionary tale to tell over drinks at the tavern. They were free. Or they could be. All Pearce had to do was walk away. Find a horse. Ride to Hobart. Board a ship bound for anywhere. Leave Greenhill in the bush, waiting for a partner who would never return. He could do it. Greenhill didn't have the axe. By the time he realized Pearce wasn't coming back, Pearce would be miles away, lost in the crowd of a busy harbor town. He thought about it. He stood at that crossroads for a long time, imagining the life he could have. A new name, a new country, a fresh start, with no one to share his secrets, no one who knew what he had done. He thought about Bodenham's mother, still waiting in London. He thought about Mather's prayers, whispered over campfires. He thought about Travers, dying of snake venom on a cold mountainside. He thought about the shepherd, who had done nothing wrong except live in the wrong place at the wrong time. And he thought about Greenhill, waiting in the forest, trusting him in his own twisted way, trusting him because they were the same. Whatever I am, you are too. He could run. He could betray Greenhill and disappear into the world. But he would still be what he was. He would still carry what he had done. Running wouldn't change that. Nothing would ever change that. He walked back into the trees as the sun began to sink. Found the place where he had left Greenhill, beside the fallen log, in the shadow of the great eucalyptus. Greenhill was sitting exactly where Pearce had left him. The axe was back in his hands. "You're early," Greenhill said. "I wasn't expecting you for another hour." "The news is good," Pearce said. "They think we're dead, all of us. No one's looking." "Dead." Greenhill's smile spread slowly. "I like that. We're ghosts. Hobart is 3 days east. Ships leave regularly. We can be gone by the end of the week. Then we move tonight. Put some distance between us and this village before anyone gets curious." "Greenhill," Pearce hesitated. "I could have run. You know that." "I know. Why did you trust me?" Greenhill walked toward him, stopping close enough that Pearce could see the flecks of darker color in his gray eyes. "Because you're a survivor," Greenhill said quietly. "And survivors know that the only way out is through. You couldn't run from me any more than you could run from yourself." "Now," Greenhill continued, stepping past him toward the road, "let's go become someone else." They walked through the night. The road unspooled before them like a ribbon of pale dust, winding through farmland and forest, past sleeping homesteads and silent paddocks. Pearce kept his eyes forward, watching Greenhill's back, watching the axe that swung with each step. They didn't speak. There was nothing left to say. By dawn, they had covered 15 miles. The landscape had changed again. More farms now. More fences. More signs of the civilization they were approaching. Smoke rose from chimneys in the middle distance. Carts rattled along connecting roads. The world was waking up around them. "We need to rest," Greenhill said, veering off the road into a copse of wattle. "Sleep through the day, move again at night. One more push, and we'll reach the coast." Pearce lay back against his pack and stared up through the branches. The sky was lightening, shifting from black to purple to the pale blue of early morning. Birds were beginning to sing. Kookaburras laughing their strange laughing call, magpies warbling, wrens chittering in the undergrowth. Normal sounds, the sounds of a world that didn't know what he had done. "When we reach Hobart," Greenhill said quietly, "we separate." Separate? Two men traveling together, just like I said before. Too suspicious. Greenhill was lying with his arms crossed behind his head, the axe beside him, his eyes closed. "You take one ship, I take another. We never see each other again." "Just like that," Pearce said. "After everything." "After everything." Greenhill opened one eye. "You sound disappointed." "I sound surprised. I didn't think you'd let me go." "Let you go? You think I'm keeping you prisoner?" He sat up slightly, propping himself on one elbow. "You could have left 12 times, in the village, on the road, right now, while I'm half asleep. But you didn't. I told you why. You told me you're a survivor. That's not why." Greenhill's eyes were sharp now, fully awake. "You stayed because you need me. You need someone who knows what you are, someone who doesn't judge, because they're the same. You stayed because being alone with what we've done is worse than being together." "Maybe," Pearce admitted. "Maybe." Greenhill lay back down, closing his eyes again. "Get some sleep. Tonight we finish this." Pearce couldn't sleep. He lay still, feigning rest, but his mind raced in circles that led nowhere. He watched Greenhill's chest rise and fall, watched the hand that never quite released the axe handle, watched the face that could shift from human to monster in the space of a heartbeat. This was the last day. Tomorrow, they would reach the coast. Tomorrow, they would separate, board different ships, sail to different corners of the world. Tomorrow, Robert Greenhill would become nothing but a memory, a nightmare that faded with distance and time. Unless... The thought came unbidden, rising from some dark place Pearce hadn't known existed before this journey. The thought that had probably occurred to every man who had ever walked beside Robert Greenhill. He could end it now. Greenhill was asleep. The axe was right there. One swing, one moment of violence, and Pearce would be truly alone, truly free. No one to share his secrets. No one who knew what he had become. His hand moved. Slowly, carefully, reaching across the space between them. His fingers brushed the axe handle. Cool, smooth, familiar from all the times he had watched others wield it. Don't. Greenhill's eyes were open. He hadn't moved, His body was still relaxed, his breathing still slow, but his eyes were fixed on Pearce's face with a terrible clarity. "I was wondering when you'd try," Greenhill said quietly. "I've been waiting for it." "I wasn't." "You were." Greenhill sat up, his hand closing around the axe. "Don't lie. Not now. Not after everything. Every man who's walked beside me has thought about it," Greenhill continued. "Mather, Travers, Bodenham probably, though he didn't have the courage. It's natural. I'm a threat. I'm dangerous. And the easiest way to be safe from me is to kill me. Then why haven't you killed me first?" "Because you're useful. Because 2 men survive better than 1. And because..." He paused, something flickering across his face. "Because I wanted to see if you'd actually do it." "And now?" "Now I know," Greenhill said. "You wanted to. You almost did. But you stopped. Because you woke up. I was never asleep." Greenhill smiled, thin and cold. "I stopped sleeping weeks ago. Not properly, not deeply. The bush teaches you that. Sleep too deeply and you die. So this was a test. Everything is a test." Greenhill stood, brushing leaves from his trousers, the axe balanced casually in his grip. "You passed, or failed. Depends how you look at it." "I don't understand." "You're not a killer," Greenhill said quietly. "Not truly. You've helped. You've eaten. But you've never struck the blow yourself. That's why you're still alive." I don't kill the weak," Greenhill continued. "Mather wasn't weak. He was a threat. Bodenham was chosen by lots. Travers..." His voice caught just slightly. "Travers was dying anyway. But you..." He shook his head. "You're a follower. You do what you need to do to survive. But you'll never lead. You'll never challenge me. That makes you safe." "Safe," Pearce repeated. The word tasted bitter. "Safe." Greenhill extended a hand toward him, an offer to rise, to continue, to accept his place in the hierarchy. "Come on. We have miles to cover before dawn." They smelled the ocean before they saw it. The salt tang hit Pearce's nostrils like a memory. The transport ship, the endless weeks at sea, the first sight of Van Diemen's Land rising from the waves. The smell of hope and despair, of endings and beginnings. "Close now," Greenhill murmured. "A few more hours." They crested a hill just before dawn, and there it was, Hobart Town. The town sprawled along the banks of the Derwent River, a jumble of stone buildings and wooden shacks, warehouses and taverns, churches and counting houses. Ships crowded the harbor, brigs and barks, whalers and traders, vessels bound for Sydney, for England, for the far corners of the earth. Freedom, escape, a new life. It was all right there, spread before them like a promise. "We did it," he breathed. "We actually did it." "Not yet." Greenhill's voice was sharp, focused. "We're still escaped convicts until we're on a ship. We're still dead men until we're at sea." "The harbor district," Greenhill said. "That's where we find passage. Ship's captains don't ask questions if you have strong arms and a willingness to work." And we separate there. We separate there. Greenhill turned to look at him, and for a moment, just a moment, something almost like warmth flickered in his eyes. It's been something walking with you. Something, Pearce agreed. The word carried the weight of everything they couldn't say. When you're far from here, Greenhill said quietly, when you're safe in some other country, living some other life, don't think about this. Don't remember their names. Don't dream about them. I already dream about them. Then stop. Greenhill's voice was firm. The dead are dead. The past is past. You can't undo what's done. The only thing that matters now is what comes next. Good luck, Pearce, Greenhill said. He didn't offer his hand. May we never meet again. Good luck, Greenhill. They walked down the hill together, the last distance they would ever share. At the edge of the town, where the road split into a dozen different paths, they stopped. Greenhill turned right, toward the western wharves. Pearce turned left, toward the eastern docks. Neither looked back. Alexander Pearce walked into Hobart Town alone. He walked past shops and taverns, past merchants and sailors, past women carrying baskets and children playing in the streets. He walked like a man with nothing to hide, a man with a clear conscience, a man who had never tasted human flesh or watched his companions die one by one in the wilderness. He walked until he reached the harbor, and there, bobbing at the dock, he saw his salvation. A whaling ship, its crew loading supplies, its captain shouting orders from the deck. You there! The captain pointed at Pearce. You looking for work? Pearce opened his mouth to answer, and in that moment, standing on the edge of freedom, he felt a hand close around his shoulder. Alexander Pearce? Escaped convict from Sarah Island? He turned slowly. A constable stood behind him, flanked by 2 soldiers with muskets. You're under arrest, the constable said, for the murder of your companions. They didn't believe him. Pearce sat in the cell and told them everything. He told them about the escape, about the horizontal scrub, about the starvation that had driven them to the unthinkable. He told them about the lots, about Bodenham, about Mather. He told them about Travers and the snake, about Green Hill and the axe, about the shepherd, whose name they never learned. He told them the truth, every terrible piece of it. And they laughed. Cannibalism, the magistrate said, the word dripping with disbelief. You expect me to believe that 8 men escaped into the bush and ate each other? It's the truth. The truth. The magistrate leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. The truth is that you and your companions murdered a shepherd named Thomas Connolly. We found his body. We found evidence of your camp nearby. What happened to the others I cannot say. Perhaps you murdered them too, for their share of the stolen goods. There were no stolen goods. We had nothing. We were starving. Enough. The magistrate waved a dismissive hand. I've heard enough fantasies. You'll be returned to Sarah Island to serve out your sentence with additional time for the escape and the murder of Mr. Connolly. What about Green Hill? Pearce asked. He's still out there. He's the one who... Robert Greenhill is presumed dead, like the others. Lost in the wilderness. The magistrate gathered his papers, already losing interest. Take him away. Hell's Gate opened to receive him again. The narrow passage between the cliffs seemed tighter this time, the water blacker, the rocks sharper. Pearce sat in the belly of the longboat, his wrists manacled, and watched the prison emerge from the mist. The same low buildings, the same timber yards, the same mud that had swallowed so many men before him. The guards who received him were different. New faces, new uniforms, but their cruelty was the same. They stripped him, searched him, beat him for good measure, then threw him into a cell smaller than the one in Hobart. The cannibal, one of them sneered through the bars. That's what they're calling you. The cannibal who ate his mates. They didn't believe him. That was the cruelest part. He had confessed to the most terrible crimes a man could commit, and they had dismissed it as fantasy, as lies designed to protect accomplices who were already dead. The truth was too horrible to accept, so they chose to believe something simpler, something easier, something that let them sleep at night. A year passed. Pearce worked. He ate his weevil maize. He received his lashes when the guards felt like giving them. He did everything that was expected of him, and he did it in silence. But inside, something was changing. The hunger never left. Not the physical hunger. They fed him enough to keep him working, but something deeper. A craving that had been awakened in the wilderness and refused to go back to sleep. He dreamed of meat. Not mutton or beef or pork, the other kind. The kind he had tasted around campfires in the mountains while the rain fell and the dead kept him alive. He tried to forget. He prayed, for the first time since childhood. He whispered the rosary his mother had taught him, counting the beads on an imaginary string. But the prayers brought no peace, and the dreams continued. And then, one morning in November of 1823, a new convict arrived on the work gang. His name was Thomas Cox. Cox was 24, a farmhand from County Cork, transported for stealing sheep. He had the soft hands and hopeful eyes of a man who still believed things might get better. Pearce watched him struggle with the axe, watched the guards mock him, watched the other convicts ignore him. He watched, and he remembered. "First time in the yards?" Pearce asked, falling into step beside Cox as they marched back to the huts that evening. "First day on the island." Cox's voice trembled. "Is it always like this? Always, unless you escape." "Escape? From here? They say it's impossible." "They're wrong." Pearce's voice dropped. "I escaped once. I know the way." "You escaped? And they caught you?" "They caught me, but not because the bush beat me, because someone recognized me in town." Pearce met Cox's eyes. "The route is good. The path is clear. All you need is a partner." "A partner. Someone strong. Someone who won't turn back." "I'm strong," Cox said. "I won't turn back." Pearce smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "Good," he said. "We leave tomorrow night." They escaped the same way, through the same gap in the patrols, into the same forest that had consumed so many men before. But this time, Pearce carried food. He had been hoarding it for weeks. Pieces of bread, scraps of meat, anything he could hide from the guards. He had enough for several days, enough to reach the settlements without starving. And yet... How far to the settlements? Cox asked on the second morning. They were resting beside a creek, their breath misting in the cold air. 4 days, maybe 5. And you know the way? I know the way. I can't believe we made it, Cox said, turning back with a grin. 2 days out, and no one's following. We're going to be free, Pearce. Actually free. Yes, Pearce said. His hand moved to the knife he had stolen from the kitchen. We are. Cox saw it too late. His eyes widened. His mouth opened to scream. He ate. He had food in his pocket, bread and cheese and dried mutton, enough for days, but he ate Thomas Cox instead. Not because he had to, because he wanted to. The hunger had won. Whatever had been human in Alexander Pearce, whatever had prayed and wept and hesitated in the wilderness, was gone now. Eaten, like everything else. What remained was something simpler, something older, a predator. He didn't run. He didn't try to reach the settlements. He simply sat by the fire, eating his fill, waiting for whatever came next. They found him 3 days later. The search party burst through the trees with muskets raised, expecting a fight. Instead, they found Pearce sitting calmly beside the remains of Thomas Cox, a piece of flesh still in his hand. You're too late, Pearce said. He was smiling. I've already eaten breakfast. They believed him this time. July 19th, 1824. Alexander Pearce stood on the gallows in Hobart Town, the noose rough against his neck, and looked out at the crowd that had gathered to watch him die. There were hundreds of them, merchants and laborers, women and children, soldiers and convicts, all staring at the cannibal, all waiting for the drop. A priest stood beside him, muttering prayers that Pearce didn't hear. The hangman checked the knots, adjusted the rope, stepped back. "Have you any last words?" the magistrate called. Pearce thought about all the things he could say. About Greenhill, who had escaped justice and was probably sailing free on some distant ocean. About Bodenham and Mather, whose bones were still scattered across the mountains. About Thomas Cox, who had trusted the wrong man. About the hunger that had consumed him from the inside out. He thought about all of it. And then he spoke. "Man's flesh is delicious," he said clearly. "It tastes far better than fish or pork." The trapdoor opened. Alexander Pearce died at 34 years of age. His body was cut down and given to the surgeons, who dissected it in search of some physical explanation for his monstrosity. They found nothing. Just a man. Ordinary bones, ordinary organs, ordinary flesh. Whatever had made him what he was, it couldn't be found with a scalpel. The bush kept its secrets. Somewhere in those mountains, the bones of Thomas Bodenham lay scattered beneath a rock overhang. Somewhere, John Mather's remains fed the roots of ancient trees. Somewhere, the three men who had turned back, Dalton, Kennerly, Brown, had fallen and never risen again. The land had eaten them all in the end. And Robert Greenhill? He was never seen again. Some said he made it to a ship, sailed to America, lived out his days under another name. Some said the bush claimed him too in the end, that he died alone, somewhere beyond the mountains, with the axe still in his hand. No one knew for certain. The wilderness kept that secret too. Conclusion. Alexander Pearce's skull sits in a museum today. After his execution, the surgeons kept it. A curiosity. A specimen. Something to show medical students when discussing the criminal mind, as if the shape of a man's skull could explain the darkness inside it. For 200 years, people have stared at those empty eye sockets, searching for answers. What made him do it? Was he born a monster, or did the wilderness create him? Was it madness, or survival, or something older and darker that sleeps inside every human heart? The skull offers no answers. It never does. The bush remembers what men forget. Sarah Island is a ruin now. Crumbling walls and rusted chains, slowly being reclaimed by the forest that surrounds it. Tourists visit sometimes, walking the same ground where convicts bled and died, taking photographs of the place that was once called Hell on Earth. But most of the wilderness Pearce crossed remains untouched. The horizontal scrub still tangles across the mountains, still swallows anyone foolish enough to enter without preparation. Hikers vanish there even now, in the age of GPS and satellite phones. The bush takes them the same way it took the convicts, silently, completely, without apology. The newspapers called him a monster. The authorities called him a liar, until they couldn't anymore. The church refused to bury him in consecrated ground. But Pearce never claimed to be innocent. He never asked for forgiveness. He never pretended that what he did was anything other than what it was. He told the truth, and no one believed him. He told the truth again, with Thomas Cox's flesh still on his breath, and they finally understood. Some say he was mad. Some say the starvation broke something inside him that could never be repaired. Some say he was simply evil, a bad seed that found bad soil and grew into something terrible. But perhaps the truth is simpler than that. Perhaps Alexander Pearce discovered something in those mountains that most men never learn. Something about the thin line between civilization and savagery. Something about what waits inside us when the rules fall away and survival becomes the only law. He didn't just survive the wilderness. He became part of it. And when they finally caught him, when they put the rope around his neck and asked for his last words, he didn't beg or pray or repent. He told them the truth one final time. Man's flesh is delicious. We tell ourselves that we are different, that civilization has tamed the animal inside us, that we would never do what Pearce did, no matter how desperate we became. But we have never walked through the horizontal scrub with empty bellies and no hope. We have never watched our companions die one by one, knowing we might be next. We have never sat across a dying fire from the last man alive, knowing that only one of us would see the morning. Until we have, we cannot know what we would become. Alexander Pearce knew. And that knowledge, that terrible, honest knowledge of what he truly was, might have been the heaviest thing he carried out of those mountains. Heavier than guilt, heavier than hunger, heavier than the axe he finally used to kill Robert Greenhill. The knowledge that the monster wasn't something he had become. It was something he had always been. Something we might all be, if the circumstances were right. Sleep well tonight. And if you wake hungry in the darkness, remember Alexander Pearce. Remember what the wilderness taught him, and hope you never learn the same lesson.